The Guns on Pegs podcast is brought to you by ITAP Group. Hello and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast. My name's George Brown.
My name's Chris Horn.
And we are on location.
This is how they should have always been.
This is what the podcast was intended to be. Recorded in a shoot room at the end of a day's shooting.
This is absolutely brilliant. I think this is what we always wanted.
So before we go any further, you better just explain where we are.
Am I going to do the description? That's really your job, but I'll hash it for you if you want. So you know when you go to a proper syndicate shoot and you go into one of those rooms where you can have a really good game of what's that game where you go, pass the parcel? No, it's not pass the parcel. The other one.
Too much time at kids' birthday parties. Recently.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that recently, haven't you? What's the game where you sit round then you have to get a seat? Musical chairs, thank you. Musical chairs. So when you have a game of musical chairs, anyway, you're in a syndicate room and there's chairs everywhere. Every syndicate shoot that you go to has that set up. We're in one of those.
Yeah.
And there's a wood burner and it's really warm.
I'm unbelievably hot.
You're sitting
on one side.
Right next to it. But it's a proper job. Decent kitchen, really lovely. We'll come on to this in a minute.
Well, I think to give a real picture of where we are and what we've been doing, we should probably crack on and speak to our... I was going to say speak to our guests, but we're the guests.
This is true. This is the first time we're the guests. George, I think you should intro, because there's actually a backstory to this, which you need to give a quick précis of.
So regular listeners will remember that at the game fair...
Car alarm outside Shoot Lodge.
And cut. So, regular listeners will remember that at the game fair this year, we handed out some prizes and awards for shooting heroes as nominated by our listeners. And one of the people who was nominated didn't win a prize, actually, so we're lucky to be here, was Bill, who has been our host today. Bill, perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Bill Barley, and I've been running this shoot now for 47 years. It's always been very friendly, very successful. Everybody comes here, we enjoy our day. We don't take it that seriously. We take our shooting seriously, but we'd soon have a real fun day with all of our friends rather than shoot large numbers.
Which is exactly the right attitude, I think, don't you, Chris?
Absolutely. And that's what happened today. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened today, yes.
And we're going to go into a bit more detail about the history of the shoot and the story behind it. But we have also got with us Gary. Gary, can you introduce yourself as well, please?
Yeah, I'm Gary. I'm Bill's stepson. Took over the running of the shoot here 4 seasons ago. I've been beating here and working my dogs here for goodness knows how long. Grew up with Bill and most of the people here you've seen today.
Do you know what I've loved about today? And I don't think I've been to many shoots where the group, the syndicate, the beaters, everyone else is from like that close a vicinity to the shoot and has been doing it forever. And it makes a really unique atmosphere. It's lovely.
Most of us were at primary school in the village. Literally, I can see from here where the school is. And then we've come through the ranks from beating to... Some of them have migrated on to become guns, and I migrated on to becoming keeper.
And we should probably say that we've also got in the room several members of the syndicate. I'm not going to ask you all to introduce yourselves because we haven't got enough microphones, but perhaps you could just give us a cheer.
We haven't actually said what the name of the shoot is yet.
Well, go on then.
Well, the chaps didn't introduce it, I suppose. So we're at Horsham Farm Shoot. Actually, guys, do you want to explain geographically where we are?
Yep, so we're Horsham Farm, or Horsham Marsh technically. We're in a little village in North Kent called Upchurch, right on the Medway Estuary, literally no more than 200 metres from where we're sitting, you'll get wet feet. We're bordered on one side by the Medway Towns, or just the other side of the estuary by the Medway Towns. The estuary on the other two sides.
So on the card from today, just to give a context what I was referring to a second ago, I think quite a few of the guns and people here today are the kids in the picture on the front of the card.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah,
which is absolutely amazing. The fact that you've managed to keep it that consistent.
Yeah.
Who's doing that? Is this Bill's influence? I'm going to give you a chance here, Gary.
So Bill is a very well-known character in the village.
This is going one of two ways. Go.
I think most of us here who were at school up in the village here, we all knew Bill of old, and we all knocked about down here in the back of his old Datsun truck with no doors, rallying around here, putting birds out, putting pens up, doing all sorts of mad, crazy things, flying parachutes off the back of the truck on a what do you call it, parasail. He's an extremely good water skier as well, would you believe?
I'll believe pretty much anything.
I didn't see you doing it today. That's a shame.
He would do if we had enough water.
Because on that drive where I was on the seawall, you could have blanked a few in by water skiing down.
That is one of the creeks where I used to ski in every week.
Really?
Yeah.
Mono skiing as well.
Mono
None of this two skis for
Yeah,
pants.
no,
This is
proper
mono
stuff.
skiing.
Yeah.
Wow.
With the rope round his neck normally. And that's not a joke either. It's not a joke.
He's a nutter.
Yeah. Yes, you twigged on quite quickly.
I get it. That's why the Datsun had no doors.
They got in the way of lamping foxes because if you shoot through a door, it tends to ricochet.
No.
Right. So before we go any further, I think we'd better do the traditional first feature of the podcast, which is a feature called "What's That You're Drinking?" So let's start with Bill. Bill, what have you got in your glass?
It's empty.
Oh dear.
Hold on.
It doesn't matter. It's brandy and Coke.
There was brandy and
Martell
Coke in
there was Martell and brandy and Coke in there, but you guys told me if so could have a drink before you done this podcast, so I've done exactly that.
Is it? Could we possibly get Bill a top up? Is that all right?
Leslie, please.
So I've heard that this is a brandy drinking room.
Definitely.
Is it a normal ritual after the shoot day in here?
Well,
Team together.
Well, definitely. During the shoot day and after the shoot day, we always have a good drink after we finish shooting. A little tipple during the day. That's it.
And
really.
it's not far to stagger home, is it?
Well, I was going to say everyone's walking about 200 yards, so this is great.
Yeah.
And Gary, what have you got?
Well, I'm actually having a change as we sit here now because I can feel some eyeballs. So we've actually got some homebrew slow gin, which that was brewed by my wife, which the slows came from that hedge literally 50 feet behind you. The gin didn't, but home brew.
And you got half a pint of it. Lovely.
Well,
It's a big
it
old
saves
bucket
keep
full.
going back, doesn't it?
That's normal for us.
So in this awesome little shoot lodge, there's Aladdin's fridge at the back.
It's one of the best stock shoot fridges I've ever seen.
That's courtesy of mother.
So we've been rooting around in there. George, what did you find?
Well, I've got a longish way to drive back home. So I've just got a driving lager. It's a can of very cold and refreshing Foster's, which I don't think I've had a can of Foster's for probably 15 years, maybe even longer. But I'm enjoying it.
I'm glad you're having
Well,
it.
I'll tell a lie, I had one at lunchtime.
That's a proper supermarket lager.
It really
lager.
is, yeah.
You've taken that mantle off me, I think,
I have had a few recently.
If the pod drink analysts could confirm, I think you are the new title holder of
Well,
supermarket lager.
I've got a few good ones up my sleeve for the new year.
Good supermarket lagers or just good lagers?
Good drinks.
Fair enough.
And you have got...
Well, I don't think this classes as well. It certainly doesn't class as supermarket lager. I've got a Guinness. I love a Guinness, and I've never had a Guinness on the pod. I had a Guinness Zero once, about 3 years ago.
Well, I think now that we've all got a drink in hand, I'd love to go back to the beginning of the shoot. So, Bill, when did you start the shoot? What was the motivation? How did it all come about?
Well, basically, what really happened, I looked after a shoot over on the Isle of Sheppey for about 3 years for Horsham Farm Estates, Mackleton and Kemsley's. Then they decided to sell the farm. So basically, here we are, got no shoot to go to or do anything. So one day, a gentleman called Richard Hinge, one of the big landowners around it, came down the road and said, well, what are you going to do now, Bill? I said, well, I'd like to start my own shoot. He said, well, you best get on with it then. And that was the beginning of it. Got all the farmers together, and that's really how it all started.
And how long ago was that?
47 years ago.
47 years ago. And you've been, until Gary took over a few years ago, you were running the show, doing all the keeping, all that sort
A
of
lot,
stuff.
yes, basically.
How has the shoot changed over that time?
Well, it hasn't really changed much over that period of time. We're still sort of putting down the same amount of birds. We're trying to bring on English, as you found out today. But in numbers, it's very similar to when we first started. So in numbers, it's pretty similar.
And I mean, for people who aren't familiar with this part of the world, Gary, perhaps you could give us a description of the landscape that we're talking about here.
Right, that we border the estuary, we're not known for our hills and valleys. We are on predominantly marsh ground. We're not on a woodland shoot. It doesn't lend itself for pheasant rearing. We are largely flat. We have one drive which has a little bit of lift on it, but the rest of it is relatively flat. Orchards, we push in one orchard, but other than that, we're relatively just flat marshland, lots of ditches and dikes. That's kind of the lay of the land as we have it here.
And for anybody who's not in sort of East Anglia, it would be a pretty unusual sort of landscape to find yourself shooting in. But I think it's fair to say, Chris, that these guys do an incredible job of showing some fantastic birds.
Absolutely, and using the land as well, as we found out on the third drive.
Well, yeah, so perhaps we should talk about that a bit.
Yeah, we should. It was brilliant. I mean, Bill strategically placed us for this
He did.
this
I feel
part.
very honoured. This drive that we're talking about on
the fourth drive.
What's the drive name?
Peewee.
Peewee. And we're always interested in drive names. Is there a particular reason for that?
Over to you, Bill.
Well, it's always been called Peewee. I mean, basically, it's not only a shoot; it's a nature reserve as well. And basically, it's renowned for peewees nesting in this area, hence the name. But what you was actually doing today, you were actually shooting on the top of the seawall, overlooking Ottram Creek.
Yes, I was going to try and describe it, but I'm going to make you do it instead.
I saw a couple lapping at the start of the drive.
Did
actually.
you?
Yeah. Do you see them?
No, I didn't.
There's plenty about.
Yeah, that explains the name. That's nice. So we were double banked because all sorts was going on, and you were in front of me.
Yeah, I was sort of front gun.
There was one moment where I thought I was going to die, but
It did cross my mind.
So you and I were both on the seawall as it sort of jutted into the land.
Yeah, sort of a bit of a peninsula situation.
And then in front of us, as we were looking at it, the land goes out to the right. And the beaters were coming from way back, but to our right. And in between us would have been at high tide water, low tide mud. So the birds were coming kind of straight at you.
Sometimes literally straight at me.
But and also a long way to your right. And then because they didn't really want to
over the mud flats.
Over the mud flats, and because they didn't want to go out to sea, they were curling back in. So I had some partridge on my right, which wouldn't have been your birds just because of the way that they were going around. So that's kind of why it worked really well being double banked, because even the gun on my left had some shooting that was coming way out from the right. So.
And you guys warned us at the beginning that sometimes the partridges out over the mudflats would be effectively below us, and you were absolutely correct. It was one of the most unique bits of shooting I've ever experienced.
And it makes a different noise out there, doesn't it?
It really does. The first time I pulled the trigger, I thought it was... I didn't know what was going on. It's a proper sort of strange echo off the rocks, isn't it?
Yes.
It's been funneled straight down the creek. And it comes back at you.
That's probably the most talked about drive here, just because almost of its unique nature, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, as you've seen today, our drives are very much on top of each other. We don't have a huge amount of expanse of land to go at. So making use of every inch of it is key, really. And each drive feeds the next one, feeds the next one, feeds the next one.
And what is it, sort of 250 acres, something like that?
Yeah, we sit on about 250 acres, yeah.
So we shot a bag of 64 today, with 2 English in there. Hold on. You and me?
You both shot them.
This is very unusual.
Well, it's very unusual for me to connect with anything at all. It's a very unfortunate English partridge.
I will say at this point, you did shoot a good bird today.
I did, one.
No, I mean, we obviously saw lots of good birds. It's just very unusual for George to connect with them. So I was very pleased for him when that happened.
I thought I'd hamstring you by giving you some of my cartridges today.
There was one particular bird you shot where you did that sort of thing where someone shoots a good bird and they look around and pretend not to look around as if, I do this all the time, and then carry on reloading.
I was checking to make sure it wasn't you that poached it off the other side.
Shit, was it me? Yeah, it was you.
Can I just say, I think both you gentlemen shot extremely well today.
Oh, that's
Some
very kind. Of you.
very testing birds.
I mean, we should say it's been blowy.
Yeah. The weather forecast said like 30. That wind was good 30 plus mile an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, and gusting. Yeah.
Very enjoyable.
Yeah, we on a still day, it's very, very hard to produce any good birds.
Like any,
Yeah.
You get the wind up the tail and it goes the right way.
And they go.
They go and they do lift.
I mean, both of us have grown up on flatter ground partridge shoots.
Yeah.
So this is. Yeah, we know how you feel at 8 a.m. when you see the sun out the window.
Yes, yeah.
But I mean, being where you are on the coast here, I imagine you don't get too many still days over the course of a season.
Not really. I mean, you can be up in the village, which is about 300 yards behind you, George, and it'd be completely different to being down here. You drop down that hill and it's a different weather altogether. You could be 30 mile an hour winds down here and nothing at the top.
So when we had the Game Fair episode and Bill and Gary were there, the reason, well, there's a bunch of reasons why Bill got nominated, but obviously the work that you've put in here is, well, it was really in summary for that as a whole, but there's been a lot going on more recently, and I think it sounds like Gary's influence on that has been pretty large as well. So tell us a bit of background, because you also got an award from Basque, didn't you, just at the...
Yeah, that was the Stanley Duncan Trophy for conservation on this marsh.
Talk us through the backstory.
Well, basically, what it is, I mean, as well as being a shoot, it's also a conservation marsh. This is where a lot of people don't understand. Shooting and conservation does go together.
Yeah.
What the people don't see in the winter is when we're feeding the birds in the hoppers, and it's a really hard winter, you've got skylarks under the hoppers feeding, you've got meadowpipers under the hoppers feeding, which takes them through the winter. This is the bit that they don't see. How shooting goes hand in hand with conservation, and this is a perfect place to prove that.
And there's been a bigger project as well, the little island that you guys have.
Yeah, the Tern Island.
Tern Island. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so Bill spoke about it a few years ago about trying to encourage the little terns to nest here. They do come through, but not necessarily staying and nesting. In order for them to nest, they like a shingle beach, if you like. So we had an island at our disposal in the middle of the fleet off of the estuary. So we scalped the top off of that and put 140 tonne of shingle on there. And we're hoping to attract them for nesting, hopefully this coming spring.
Well, you must let us know if you do get some nests.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success. Well, Bill's had a lot of success. A few years back, when did we do those islands?
Yeah.
That was 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah. We've actually got one of the largest colonies of nesting avocets in the country.
Wow. I bet that's quite the sight.
Yeah. Well, yes. There's nothing to have 40, 50 pairs nesting there, or even more. Sometimes 35 pairs on one island. And they actually winter, whereas many years ago the avocets used to migrate. They don't now. They live in Horsham Creek all winter. In the spring, they're back in onto our islands nesting.
Presumably because of, well, it's triple SI, right?
It is triple SI, yes.
And because it's a nature reserve, essentially.
Yes.
Presumably you get a lot of the organisations or a lot of these bodies coming down for Really?
No.
Wow.
No, basically, we don't allow that. We do have bird counts here.
Yeah.
I've got a chap from the BTO who does bird counts here, but basically, we don't let anybody out there during the nesting season. They do the RSPB and BTO. They did do a count a couple of years ago, but normally it stays quiet. And one other thing I ought to add, many years ago when they decided they wanted to put the coastal path around our seawall, which is where it should have gone, I got in touch with Natural England, and they considered, because of what we'd done here, it was so sensitive and shouldn't be disturbed, and that footpath was diverted inland.
That's quite an achievement.
That is a real achievement.
Well, yes.
Getting them to listen to you, I think.
Well, yes, but they did.
So it literally goes round the other side?
It goes through here now. It just doesn't go around the seawall at all.
Nice.
Not our section of the seawall.
Yeah.
The last thing you need if you've got nesting habitats or any nesting wading bird, human disturbance. So because of that, they diverted the footpath inland.
So you must have had a fair few conversations with Natural England over your time.
Well, yes, I do, but I get on very well with Phil Williams. He's one of the chaps that runs it, and basically we've had lots of meetings, discussions, and I even had a minister down here. Basically, what they wanted to do was these marshes that we've shot today. They wanted to turn those into a spreading area, which would give the general public access to all these marshes you shot on today, even though the footpath was diverted inland. Anyway, I objected to it, and the minister came down, met him just outside here, and we had a great discussion. I explained to him what we was trying to do. He said, do you think I could go over there? I said, well, only if you've got thigh boots. And he said, well, I don't really think. He said, I need to go over there. He said, I think I've seen all I need to see. And it was squashed.
I mean,
That's brilliant.
Immediately squashed.
I mean, that should give everybody listening an idea about what a special place this is, really, because for those sorts of decisions to get made, it is quite remarkable.
Did the fact that you were running a shoot come up much during these discussions?
Well, no, not really. It's triple SSI land. We have permission from Natural England to shoot this area here about 10 or 12 times a year. Unfortunately, we're limited to where we can have the cover crops. They have to be where they are at the moment.
Yeah.
We can't have any additional land for cover crops, but we're happy with what we've got. Phil Williams knows and has confidence in us here that we will do the right thing. We won't abuse the marsh. By the way, we don't shoot waterfowl here. We've got hundreds of geese and ducks. Sometimes it's thousands of ducks in there. We don't shoot waterfowl, geese. We don't shoot snipe or woodcock here. So the wading birds are completely safe here, and they come in their thousands.
Sure they do, yeah.
It's like a nature reserve for the wildlife.
Amazing. Gary, talk to us about the English that we saw today, because this was fascinating, and you're on quite a project here.
Yeah, so it's Bill's baby, really. I just provide the muscle, but it's about, we used to have English here years ago when you were a child, and there was English here, and then changing farming policy and things, and they gradually get pushed away. So about 12 or 14 years ago, Bill decided he wanted to reintroduce the English. So we purchased 50 from Norfolk, which we brought back down. And then Bill got stuck into the breeding programme. And you've seen the breeding pens down below there. What we try and do is keep 50 or 60 back, then pair them up into the individual pens. The hen bird will obviously lay a clutch of eggs, sometimes up to, what's the largest clutch you've had, 30?
Well, what we actually do, we feed the breeding pairs on laying pellets with fluid and vetting all winter. This basically, you're turning them into a laying machine.
Yeah.
Now, basically, some of the English pairs here will lay well over 50 eggs, 50 plus. In fact, we've just, in this last 6 months, we've just bred a whole lot of bantams, because basically what actually happens, they'll keep laying the eggs and laying the eggs. If you don't take them out, you'll have a double-decker layer like that, eggs on eggs.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And basically what will actually happen, they won't hatch. So what we actually do, we leave them with about 20, 25 eggs, and that they can cover 20 to 25 eggs. Well, I've had them hatch off here with 24 chicks, and they actually rear themselves in those pens.
That's a lot.
So you're collecting up the excess from each nest,
and they will go under
putting
bantams.
them under the bantams, which is a very, very traditional way of doing
Well,
it.
that's the old-fashioned way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah,
And the bantams do a pretty decent job of it.
Brilliant job.
Fantastic. Yes.
and I've never tried any of this myself, but I've been given to understand that the chicks that you get from hatching under bantams are just a bit smarter than an incubator hatched chick. Would you say that's true?
Definitely. They pick up all the habits from the hen, and we've had a lot of success. Unfortunately, today you didn't see the amount of English we have here, but at least you both had a covey over you, so you did shoot some English.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we'll come on to that in a second. So you move a load of the eggs. So some of the eggs stay with the partridge, some of the eggs
Some of
go
the
onto
eggs stay with the
bantams.
partridge. And I will tell you a story now. When I first wanted to do this, I spoke to a gentleman called Francis Bruner at the Game Conservancy.
Oh, yeah, I know
You
Francis.
know Francis
Yeah, I
Bruner?
met him. Yeah.
Right, I told Francis Bruner exactly what I wanted to do. And he said to me, well, Mr. Barling, he said, I'm afraid they won't. He said, where did you get your breeding stock from? I said, France. He said, well, they won't breed. I said, I've got the birds. They're in the pens. I'll give it a shot. The first one hatched off with 24 eggs, and I phoned him up and told him. He said, they don't know that many eggs. He really didn't want to know. I said, this bird has got 24 chicks. She went on to lay with the chicks a further 17 eggs. Unfortunately, they was clear. So I thought, right, I've had enough of this bloke. So basically what I've done, I've got a trail camera. Well, we got a trail camera, Leslie and I placed the trail camera about a metre from the nest, and we filmed the complete hatch of the English partridge. So I phoned up Francis Bruner and told him that. He said, oh, God, I'd love a copy of that. I thought, well, yes, you can go and whistle.
That's interesting.
And that's the truth.
Because Francis is a knowledgeable guy when it comes
He is,
to.
but he got it wrong with English.
Yeah. I when I met Francis, we were shooting down at Rotherfield in Hampshire, where they've had a huge recovery project on the go. And that's another fascinating setup. So the birds are with the partridge and the bantams. Then what happens to try and supplement the stock?
Well, basically what you do, once the covey is mature, we put them out in pens on the marsh. They remain in the pen for about a month, to get acclimatised, and then we just split the corner of the pen, about that wide so they can squeeze in out. I normally do it at dusk, so they don't get up and fly. They just come out, and every single day, that covey will be back in that pen feeding. Yeah.
So that, and you were saying earlier, Gary, about the fact that they are just a little bit more, not tame, but less scared.
So what you tend to find is with redlegs, if you release redlegs, the minute they see you going feeding, they scarper. Yeah. Well, they go to a safe distance and watch. With the greys, they're certainly the ones we've released from the small pens. You can get relatively close to them whilst feeding, and they just watch you. Some days you almost don't see them. I'd ride around on the quad bike. You don't see them until they fly up in front of you. They've been 10, 15 foot away from me while I'm filling up hoppers every day. Fascinating bird.
So in the briefing this morning, I'm looking at George now. Gary gave us a briefing. Don't shoot pairs of English. Did that make you nervous?
A bit. But I thought the probability...
You both shot cockbirds, so...
Oh, I was obviously deciding. That's what I was hoping to do. Can you not pick a English partridge cockbird out at 30 yards?
No. But I was also reasonably confident that I wouldn't connect with any I shot at anyway, so it was probably fine.
It's when we're standing and you can't see too far in front of you. If a couple of birds come out, I mean, obviously your natural reaction is dunk up. At that point, I thought, it's going to be me, isn't it?
Well, so this is interesting because
shoot the female out of a pair and then be hounded off.
You know, 2 episodes ago, we were talking about your reticence to shoot greys the other day.
Up at Teesdale.
But you didn't have quite so many qualms today. So
I got very nervous when I heard that episode.
All right, George, stick the oar in. No, the point of that conversation, even though you know, was that when you didn't know, the idea of shooting English without, I mean, when you're not told to, for me is just an absolute no-no. Because usually someone's tried very, very hard to make sure they're there. And you'd be very, very well aware if it was okay to shoot them. Now, the whole part of the premise of today was what Bill and Gary are up to here. And therefore, the idea that we might shoot a few English completely changes things.
So you've been instructed to shoot them, so you were happy to do so.
Yeah. And I've got one sitting on top of the car. I better not drive off with it still on top of the car.
It's all right, Fox has probably had it by now.
It hasn't. I'm going to eat that tomorrow, I reckon.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very good idea. I mean, I think that the English partridge I shot today was the first one I've ever shot. It's just possible that there was one way back in the midst of time that when I was 13 or 14, I was unaware of the importance of shooting an English partridge. But As far as I can remember, that's the first one I've ever shot. So apart from the seawall drive, I will never forget that moment. And it was actually there that I shot it, so I'm doubly sure never to forget that.
And the thing to make clear as well to the listeners is that we do only shoot them when there is a shootable surplus. We're not going to weigh into them and shoot hundreds in a day. Through the whole season, we may shoot maybe 35 or 40 birds. We're not talking huge numbers.
So there's two reasons. One, obviously, it's very hard to get.
It's hard to connect.
It's hard to get them over the guns. It's hard to connect with them, and it's hard to get them there in the first place. So, what percentage of wild stock would you say breeding?
I would say by this point, what would we say, 20% of wild birds,
That's wild birds, yes.
and the rest are reared and released.
But I mean, we had we've talked about peppering a lot, and we've heard about the levels that they go to at Arundel to. They sort of marked every nest on a map,
Exactly.
But they've
Yes.
got teams of underkeepers, but it's really just you guys doing this. So are you able to get anywhere approaching that? Are you down here on a daily basis?
Oh yeah, we're both down here every single day, as well as having a full-time job. This is my hobby, if you like.
Yeah. Big hobby that.
Yeah, it's very difficult. You've seen the lay of the land here, especially in the summer when the grass is long. It's very difficult to find a nest. You can watch the birds and get a rough idea where they are. But we don't really start seeing wild broods until you start seeing them. Yeah. Once they've hatched and they start moving, you can then see where they are. They're very difficult to pick out a nest. Like you say, you're peppering and you've got teams of keepers, that's fine.
So with your wild greys and all of these wild waterfowl and so on, I'm guessing there's a fairly serious predator control operation going on.
Very serious.
Yeah, that's the key to...
Very serious.
Who's in charge of that?
So,
Well,
Bill's the director of operations.
but he has been here today. The gentleman comes here, and obviously, yes, we do control the vermin as rigidly as we can. The problem is, you probably know, you can have English partridge. It can be sitting somewhere in the hedgerow. It'd be perfectly okay till the moment prior to hatching. And the moment that hen starts to lift herself up off the eggs, then she gives off a scent. Bang! The fox has got her.
So
Or
you're
a stoat.
yeah.
We don't go looking for nests. We never go looking for English partridge nests. What happens, happens. The worst thing you do is go and look for an English partridge nest, walk in and find it. The next thing Mr. Fox has followed you in. So you don't do that.
So you're on a bit of a peninsula here,
Yes.
which is pretty helpful to make.
Yeah,
this happen.
having water on three sides, well, apart from that bit there, and the village up there. You'd be amazed that the postage stamp of land that we have, 250 acres, and the number of foxes across it.
How many?
4 years, we're being just about 400.
That is an astonishing number of foxes.
But the way you could look at it is Medway towns are being built on and built on and built on. Their territories are being pushed out.
They're basically dustbin foxes.
Yeah, they're being
Right.
pushed into the countryside. They don't know. There goes an English.
There we go.
go.
That English,
just heard 'em.
that's going to be picked up in the mic
Well,
almost.
we'll find out on Tuesday.
There they go. They come to see you.
Yeah, so the foxes' territory are being squeezed. We're a small corner. They're basically being funneled to us pretty much by development.
So that's a pretty relentless operation as well.
Yeah, Martin's out here at least 3 nights a week.
3
if
nights a
not
week.
more.
He's got obviously got that one of these.
Unbelievable numbers, though.
He's got a thermoimaging scope, and he's had it 2 or 3 nights a week, and he keeps on top of the foxes for us.
But it just goes to show how much needs to be done to make any sort of impact on ground nesting birds like this. And you think across the country, it's quite staggering, really.
Wouldn't happen without fox control.
Of course it wouldn't.
No, our opponents would
And
always
not
say,
only that, the other side of the coin is that sometimes when we've got nesting avocets, loads and loads of nesting avocets, foxes have been known to swim to the island
Have they? I was wondering.
and
about
wipe out 40 nests in a night. So that's another downside why it has to be controlled. They just swim and take the eggs. I know people will probably find this hard to believe, but it's fact.
It's tough being a ground nesting bird, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing to look at is that no one wants to see the last fox on the planet, but numbers have to be managed. It is just management. Our opposition will say everything will live in harmony if we didn't shoot or hunt or whatever we may do, but it simply won't.
Well, it's where there's already an imbalance that you have to
Yes.
try and redress that balance.
But that number 400 really demonstrates how much of an imbalance there is. And I think people probably, we hear a lot of that argument Gary's just saying, like, oh no, hold on.
That's absolutely true.
It's almost this sort of rewilding argument of, oh, things can be how they were. They'll balance themselves out. Bollocks.
Rubbish.
Like, absolute rubbish.
Doesn't happen.
Rubbish. It won't happen.
We've gone too far. And that number demonstrates how far we've gone. And therefore what needs to be done if we want any form of balance going on in terms of biodiversity.
You have to control them. Basically, what's actually happened down in the mad southeast here, every piece of land is being developed. And obviously, the foxes have got less and less places to survive. And of course, they are coming to where there's a bit of cover, i.e. here, and places like this.
How many foxes are you shooting that have been looked after?
We have had evidence of
Yes.
castrated dog foxes. So they've been through the system from the urban environment, been through the Fox Project or wherever it may be, and let's release them to the countryside, they'll be fine. Unfortunately, they're not. Not only for the fact that we need to control them, but they can't survive when they're an urban fox. They're used to wheelie bins.
They're dustbin foxes. They release them into the wild. They don't really know how to survive in the wild. And of course, when they're being controlled, they're the first ones to go. And what we find is with a lot of these urban foxes, dustbin foxes, immediately they've been controlled or shot, whatever you like to say. A lot of them are full of mange. We've had foxes, half of them, with no hair on their body. They're
Really?
completely full of mange.
I just don't quite understand how. I mean, if you let your dog loose down here, you'd be in all sorts of trouble, right?
If you let your dog loose for a fox with mange are rubbed, your dog will get it. Because it happened to my brother Philip.
But I'm meaning from like the impact on the birds
Yes.
point of
Yeah.
view. But the idea that you can then, as some sort of charity, I assume, look after foxes and then release them onto an area where there's ground nesting birds or very nearby, knowing that they're going to go there, is like, what the hell is going on?
These
Rubbish.
charities are
Rubbish.
very narrow-minded, unfortunately. They don't see the bigger picture.
They can't see, actually, in fact, they don't know. These people are ignorant of what happens in the countryside. They don't know what happens. We live here and we know what happens. So it's as simple as that.
But I mean, I think, I hope that the listeners are getting some sort of idea from this conversation about just how much effort you guys put into it, how much effort other people, somebody coming out 3 nights a week to control the foxes, everybody who's here in this room right now, who's been out today, you have obviously created, between the two of you, something absolutely phenomenal. And I think Chris and I feel very, very fortunate to have been asked along today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Just
Thank
such a
you very much,
wonderful
gentlemen.
atmosphere. And I love this is what shooting's about. This room here, the people in it, the setup, the atmosphere out there today. It's
We have a
exactly
very
what
good
it's all
team.
about.
This is how we see
We're
it.
very lucky. We have a very good team of people. When it comes to work parties in the summer, the beaters are always the first ones to come to work parties. So many syndicates where the guns are the last ones to turn up, but the beaters are keen as mustard. So that we've got a good team of people. We've got Fred down there as an agricultural contractor, so he helps us with the cover crops. Sean's an agricultural contractor, he helps us as well. We've got the people around us to get stuff done.
We all work together.
Yeah. And so you've been having, one of the things we always talk about on the podcast is the importance of everything else that happens on a shoot day as well. So that's the food and the drink and the chat. So we've been very well looked after today. You guys you've just been drinking the local slow gin.
It
So
appears to be empty as well.
Oh, bloody hell.
Tell us
That's mine, Leslie.
who's in charge of the food. We've had fantastic sausage
Leslie.
rolls.
So the lunchtime is mother's job. Mum cooks all the. We've had today. Game stew today.
Does mother have a name?
Leslie.
Leslie.
Yeah.
Leslie.
Yeah. She hates me calling her mother as well.
Leslie calls his mother half.
So yeah, Mum's in charge of nourishment at lunchtime. 11's is Kaylee, my wife.
who does very good 11s too.
Yeah.
Very good
Yeah.
lunch, very
Yeah,
good
our
11s.
own-
They
our
both
own-
do very well.
Our own pheasant sausage rolls at Levenses today.
And some knock your socks off Damson gin.
Oh yeah, that
Absolutely.
was seriously good.
Chin
But I, mean,
chin.
I think one of the nicest things is that we've had game at 11s and game at lunchtime, which I think is something that a lot of shoots could learn from.
It's the way forward.
It is the way forward. We've got to be.
We're only a small group. But
But when you serve pheasant sausage rolls like that, I mean, I know, having been on lots of different places where someone will do that and other people get inspiration from that. And
Yeah.
they go home and they go,
Yeah.
I must do this.
Yeah.
Because it gives
It's a
someone
very good
biz-
way
gives
of getting
them-
someone into game.
Exactly.
Who wouldn't necessarily like to see a roast pheasant on a plate,
Yeah.
but you could, like today was honey mustard. We've had cheese and marmite pheasant sausage rolls. That's a winner.
Oh, wow.
Um,
When are you doing them?
I'm very interested.
I'll dispatch her immediately. It's a very good way of getting people into game, and we need to be seen all shoots, not just
To be doing that.
We need to be seen to be using what we are shooting. So many syndicates, so many shoots you go on. We'll shoot a good bag. We're all country people. We all know we're there for the reason. How many people actually take the birds with them and actually process them? And it's the same here. We have a rack out there which probably still got 50 birds hanging on it. And now Kaylee would take them back. They'll be prepped and put in the freezer, and the guns can have them back prepped, ready to go.
And in 2 weeks' time, that'll be lunch,
Exactly.
yes,
which is perfect.
Yeah.
And you've got the local slows. You've got talk about food miles. There aren't
1.1 it worked out. Food miles for the venison stew and the game casserole and whatever we did the other
You
week.
haven't done the numbers.
1.1 was here to home and back again. It was 1.1 miles,
Yeah.
and that was it.
Brilliant.
Talk about sustainability.
Yeah, we're very lucky as well that one of our guns, Spike, he runs a deer stalking syndicate, so we have a relatively free supply of roe, which
Nice.
is rather splendid.
So, the way we like to finish these podcasts is with a segment we call Desert Island Shooting. Now, we haven't got any notes in front of us, George.
I
Off
was
the top of
just
your
thinking,
head,
can I remember how it goes?
off the top of your head, come on. Desert Island Shooting is
Right, here we go. The extinction level asteroid hits tomorrow. The dogs are fed. Your tomatoes are watered. Your friends and enemies are reconciled.
loved ones and enemies.
Loved ones and enemies are reconciled. Close enough. Your last day begins how? Let's start with Bill.
well, what I'd like to do on my last day, I'd like to go to Drumlanrig in Scotland, which I've shot quite regular, and down to Molland in Devon on my last day. If I could do both those things, both those shoots in one day, that'd be lovely.
That would be quite the day.
I didn't think you'd do that, you know.
No, I haven't. I know.
Probably wouldn't be able to do that. The distance is too far apart.
No, you
I mean,
can
we
do
have,
that.
We have a
That'd
time
be-
machine.
No, we've got a time machine.
But see,
That'd be
what I'd
lovely.
like to know is, did you want to finish the day in here with a brandy and coke?
Yes, and I'd like to finish my day in with all of my friends around me. I've been my friends for donkey's years, and have a brandy and coke with them.
Nice.
That's how I'd like to
What-
finish
what
my
we
day.
have-
Are you taking this lot to Drumlanrig with you, or leaving them here?
They haven't come to Drumlanrig, but we all go to Devon and shoot as a group down there.
Nice.
We shot there twice last week, and they all come along and support us, and we have some remarkable days there.
So either end of in two countries for your last day shooting, then finishing up in here for a drink.
That would be my wish.
That's
Yes.
what it's all about.
Yes.
Try and make it happen.
Thank you.
Gary, what are you doing?
Right, so I'm going to start the morning slightly different. We're going to be in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco,
Right.
and we're going to be on Barbary Partridge. We'll have a little blast there, and then we'll jump in the private jet, and we'll scoot off again to Drumlanrig, shoot some stratospheric partridges that Bill keeps telling me about. We're
There's
then
a
going
slight little dig there.
We're then going to nip down. It's going to be a copycat, unfortunately, but Molland. We have got a soft spot for Molland in Devon.
Good shoot.
Spuddy, the keeper down there, is an exceptional bloke. Yes. We'll have a few drives down there, and then we're going to nip back here for a bit of walked up with my dogs. That's what I like to do. The only time I ever shoot here is walked up. Out here with these lot, and we'll have a little bit of walked up on some cock pheasant. And then what we're going to do is, because we've got an infantry soldier over there, he's going to go and see the asteroid, knock it off course, and everyone will be a winner.
What are you going to knock an asteroid off course with?
With his head.
A big stick. I was expecting some sort of military chat, but no.
And that is military. Right. Well, I mean, it has been a tremendous day. Thank you ever so much. Thank you for letting us come and record a podcast here.
Pleasure.
I'm hoping that this is the first of many on-shoot location podcasts. He says pointedly.
Definitely the way forward.
Email us pod@gunsonpegs.com.
What, to invite me? He's not. Yeah, don't beat around the bush, lovely.
This episode's going out on Christmas Eve.
Is it?
I
Oh,
think.
really?
So we should probably say Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
I'm not going to do all the stuff about garters and stuff because we've not done any correspondence. Everybody listening knows about the garters.
pod@gunsonpegs.com.
I don't seem to have a pair.
We might have to sort that out.
It's because the Garter Distribution Centre isn't in Hampshire or Kent. Otherwise, I would have bought you some. And I did rummage around this morning to see if I had any. Do you know what I did find? I found one, and it was a test garter that isn't quite the garter colours. So I couldn't give that to you.
May I just say, both you gentlemen, excellent shots. It was a pleasure to watch you.
Well, it's very kind, and that's the perfect place to end the podcast. So, thank you very much for listening. We will be back in 2025 with a new episode and some new special guests. But until then, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.
We hope you come back next year.